item on the table. That's an unfunded mandate. It costs us like $500 million a year. And if I'm not saying what I asked for is all the unfunded mandates, right? That's a way for us to get healthy, pay something for the unfunded mandates. If we just throw $25 billion at us this year and we don't do anything, we'll be back in 2 years. Then maybe we should change the legislation and not make us be self-sustaining. But as a leadership team and a board, that's what our mission is, to be self-sustaining and deliver at a high level of precision. And I'm committed to both. And I think both can be done with a little help from the Congress and from the Postal Regulatory Commission.
Well, Congress has been unwilling to be able to act on this for a very long time. It's been over a decade. Congress has discussed any kind of reforms in the post office, but it always seems to boil down to, will that change distribution areas that may or may not be needed in a state that I live in, or will it change any other post office structure that I'm familiar with? And if it changes my area, then I want to be able to block it. And so it has been a great challenge. I've also heard from multiple folks saying the post office has now so severely cut that they can't meet the capacity to actually get ballots out. And folks in rural areas and folks in urban areas, will they be able to get ballots out? I've seen your letter. That was the same as the letter in 2016 the post office sent out saying, hey, be advised, states, you need to send things out early. That's helpful. Thanks for actually doing that. And you shouldn't be criticized for that. You should be encouraged to be able to do that. But my question is, folks have challenged me and said there's not going to be enough capacity for elections. Will you have enough capacity again for Christmas and for Mother's Day? Because my understanding is Christmas and Mother's Day are the biggest capacity times for first-class mail. Do you have capacity now for Christmas and Mother's Day?
So we have, yes, we have capacity for Christmas and Mother's Day. So
I actually went back and looked last year, the week of December the 16th, the post office delivered 2.5 billion pieces of first-class mail just that 1 week of December the 16th of last year. That's a pretty remarkable feat to get 2.5 billion pieces of first-class mail delivered in one single week. So you know right now you have enough capacity to be able to handle the elections without slowing it down.
Yes, sir, and it's more than that. Besides just the capacity, the intent, the extra activities that the whole organization is going through between our postal union leaders, our board, the executive management team here, we are focused on, besides just having the capacity to execute, to react to whatever conditions exist at that particular point in time, up to and including the pandemic, which likely will still be having some impacts. So I think the American people can feel comfortable that the Postal Service will deliver on this election.
Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Langford. Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ranking Member Peters, for having this hearing. And thank you, Mr. DeJoy, for your willingness to appear before our committee today. My time is short this morning, and because I've been told you won't be staying for a second round of questions, I'd appreciate brief responses. Mr. DeJoy, I sent you a letter last week detailing stories from Granite Staters about delays in their mail. And I will note a huge spike in calls to my office since mid-July about the Postal Service and delays. For so many of our service members, veterans, people who experience disabilities, and rural Americans, their local post office is their lifeline. And I'll note that the change in volume you are seeing doesn't change the need for timely delivery of the essential, necessary items that the American public relies on the post office for. For example, one Manchester couple fills prescriptions through their VA benefits, and they wrote, quote, "There has been a noticeable slowdown in mail delivery. Mail delays have caused me to ration my medication. I start cutting back on my dosage to half pills or skipping alternate days to make them last. Some of my pills are crucial. My cardiac and diabetic meds need to be on a strict protocol. Will you ensure that any further changes that you make to postal operations do not delay access to medications and other necessities, yes or no?"
Yes, Senator, and I look forward to working with you on legislation to help this type of service not reach into the future.
Well, thank you. Now, I want to move to elections again. I am glad for some of the statements and actions you have taken. We all know how important Voting by mail is usually, and this year even more so. Some states are starting to mail out general election ballots on September 4th, just 2 weeks from today. You and the Postal Service General Counsel have written letters that we've talked about this morning about your plans to deal with election mail. You wrote last week that the Postal Service will, quote, utilize additional resources and maximize our efforts during the 10 days prior to the election to ensure the processing and delivery of all election mail within our system. Do the letters that you and the General Counsel have sent to Congress so far contain your full plan for ensuring the processing and delivery of all election mail? Or do you have a more detailed operational plan for the additional resources and efforts you alluded to?
The letter that's been sent to the states from General Counsel speaks about, complying mail classifications and how they process.
Right, Mr. DeJoy, I'm just wondering, do you have a detailed plan about how you're going to ensure the kind of delivery that Americans count on for voting by mail? Do you have a more detailed plan than what's in your letter? Yes or no?
There are detailed processes that we are going through. And there are going to be expanded plans to that. We've just announced the expanded committee, election committee within the operation, and our board has established one. But there are detailed plans that we go through in every election. And with regard to,
share those again? Could you share those with Congress? And could you share them by Sunday night so we can see what they are, please?
I don't think I will have the complete plan by Sunday night. We're just putting these committees together. But I can share you. We can try and. Today's Friday. I have to check, and we'll get back to you.
All right. I would appreciate them by Sunday night if possible. By the end of next week, as I noted, September 4th, some of the ballots are going to start going out. Last year, the Postal Service Inspector General interviewed managers in postal facilities across the country about handling elections. The Inspector General found that facilities typically process political mail as first-class mail, delivering more than 95% of election mail with 1 to 3 days for the 2018 midterms. Yes or no, will you commit to the goal of delivering at least 95% of election mail within 1 to 3 days this year, the same as the Postal Service did in 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Now I want to move on to the issue of the decommissioning of sorting machines. At the Manchester Processing and Distribution Facility in my state, 4 sorting machines have been taken out of service. 3 of them are just sitting there, and I'm told that one of them has been dismantled and sold to a company in Pennsylvania for scrap metal. The Manchester facility only has 1 other machine that can do the work of the machine that has been sold for scrap. If that machine fails, like it did yesterday when I was talking to postal workers in my state, sorting stops and mail is delayed until the machine can be fixed. Although you've suspended the removal of sorting machines, the removed machines in Manchester have yet to be brought back in service or replaced. And you've said today that it isn't necessary to do that, and there aren't any plans to do that. In fact, I understand that the Director of Maintenance Operations, Kevin Couch, sent an email on Tuesday directing local maintenance managers not to reconnect machines. Yes or no, is that true?
I have no idea about that, ma'am. Those maintenance operations still, they're maintenance operations within the districts. This whole process was new to me last week. I'm sure there's logic behind what it is. I can find out about that. We'll be happy to get to.
So you've already said, though, today that it's not necessary. But look, when we have only 1 machine that can do a certain kind of sorting in our largest distribution center in the state of New Hampshire, and it breaks and everything has to stop till it gets fixed again, that's not efficient. That delays delivery. And what I would like to get from you is a plan to make sure that you will commit to making sure that postal workers can deliver every piece of mail that comes into the distribution center on the same day it gets in there, which has been the practice in the past. By refusing to restart or replace these machines, you're really sabotaging the Postal Service's ability to sort mail efficiently, and you're undermining postal workers' commitment to that everyday delivery. So will you commit to having your team look into this and get back to me in writing about what the plan is to get at least some of these decommissioned machines back up and running?
Yes. Well, first, Senator, I don't agree with the premise, but I will comply with your request.
Well, thank you. And it would be helpful to get a response by the end of the week. And finally, I will just, because I see that I am running out of time, I will ask a question for the record because there are growing concerns that postal workers are being retaliated against when they speak to their members of Congress or to the press about some of the shortages that they are seeing, or some of the delays they're seeing, some of the sabotage and undermining of timely delivery that they are seeing. And I want to make sure that postal workers who are speaking to protect the interests of the American public that they serve with such diligence are not retaliated against for doing so. Can I have your commitment today that they will not be retaliated against for doing so?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Scott.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Johnson, for holding this hearing today. Thank you, Postmaster General DeJoy, for being here. In Florida, we've had vote by mail for a long time, and it's worked really well. And I think the post office in Florida has done a great job in making sure it's worked. I've had 3 elections, and everyone, they've worked hard to make it happen. Mr. DeJoy, can you just talk about why you're uniquely qualified and what background you bring to being Postmaster General, and why you were picked by the board of the Postal Service?
Thank you, Senator. I mean, there's 2 things, and you could look at, the 2 actions, the big actions that I've taken. I mean, the board will have to speak for their evaluation of me, but I have done, I think one of the things they like is my experience with large logistical transformations. I've done back in the 90s, over a $3 billion transformation of the postal network regarding mail transport equipment. I've done big projects for Boeing, big projects for Disney, big projects for transformational projects for Verizon. So that particular, type of experience, I think, impressed them. And my commitment to public service, I think, impressed them. My engagement in community and in the nation. When you look at the steps that I made, I didn't come in here with a team. I didn't bring in consultants. I worked with the existing management team to create an organization that would look to move forward and give us self-help and drive improvements in our service, drive costs out of the system, and grow revenues. And that is something that I've done all my life. I built a big business from nothing. People, there's some accusations that this is not a business, but when you have to deliver service and you have to be sustainable, the operating model needs to cover its costs. There is no other answer to that than that, and we need to take actions to do that. And I have great experience at that. And part of, I think, why they like me is because I have a plan. I have a plan for the success of the Postal Service. I believe in the 6-day. I believe the 6-day-a-week delivery is an important aspect, a strength in us. Now, our pieces per delivery are down under 3 now. From years ago, 6 or 7. Our goal is to get that back up. We cover, if you look on a chart and look at where what our reach is on a daily basis, it is impressive. And we need to drive our costs out of and this is well known. This is study. We need to drive our cost out of the network, get more efficient within our network, and get more pieces into our carriers' hands. And that's the success. Along with legislative help, that will be the future success for the Postal Service as we face a new economy.
So, Mr. DeJoy, in your business life, did you have to perform for your customer? Did you have to be on time, and were you able to do that?
Sir, our contracts had 99.98% performance metrics on everything we did. Yes, and I think the attitude and the energy is here at the postal, and the desire is here at the Postal Service to do that. I just think that we haven't had the alignment and the expectation of that, and that's something that I bring to the table.
So, are you? You personally committed to doing everything you can to make sure the mail is delivered on time and people get, whether it's their medicine or their ballot, that they get it as quickly as they can, with realistic expectations?
Yes, sir, I am.
Right. So how does it make you feel when you have people out here that make these unsubstantiated claims that you personally have a goal to slow down the mail so ballots don't get to election offices on time, that you want to suppress the vote, that you personally are interested in damaging the ability of the post office to do their job?
So that does not deter me at all. And I am unbelievably proud and humbled by the number of positive comments I get from employees, the management team, and the people from around America on my initiatives. It is really a farce to believe that we can sit here and do nothing.
Yep. Do you feel like you need a massive federal bailout to be able to deliver the mail on Election Day?
No, I do not need a massive. I don't need anything to deliver a mail on election night. But we do need legislative reform. We do need the freedom from the change in the PRC regulation, and we do need to be reimbursed for our costs. When you look at during the COVID. During the pandemic, we still delivered to 99% of the American homes, where other business with no revenue. The American postal worker was out there. This organization continued to perform, and this is why we have such high ratings. Well, our revenues were down. Other organizations would have stopped going into some of these rural areas and so forth. We continue to do what we're supposed to do. And at a significant cost impact, and I'm one to try and get to a sustainable model. But in this case, I believe we deserve some compensation for it.
Well, one thing I think a lot of us would like to be able to do, if we're going to provide more funding to the post office, that I'd like to work with you and others to find out what are the things that we ought to do to make the changes necessary to make sure that you can do your job in the future. So I appreciate any information you could provide that would allow us to do that. And I just want to thank you for your commitment. I want to thank all the people that work at the post office. They work hard. But I appreciate your background, your commitment to excellence, and I hope you can do the same thing over time at the post office. Thank you, Chairman Johnson.
Thanks, Senator Scott. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson, for holding this meeting here today. And thank you, Mr. DeJoy, for making yourself available. Before I ask some further questions, I want to ask the Postmaster General, I'd like to ask you this. We need transparency in the changes you've been making and in everything that you've discussed here today. Will you commit to providing this committee with any and all transcripts or minutes of all closed, non-public Board of Governor meetings from this year by this Sunday? Can you commit to that, sir?
No.
You will not commit to provide minutes?
I don't know. I don't have the authority to do some of those things, and that is something that I would need to discuss with counsel and the board's counsel. So I can't commit to that.
Well, we'll be discussing that with you, but let's move on. We have limited time. Before I go with the rest of my questions, I do want to thank the dedicated postal workers across this nation, particularly here in my state of Nevada. I spoke with many of them yesterday. Majority of them veterans in their family. They have done years of dedicated service to this country, to this nation, and they are very concerned. to Mr. DeJoy, earlier this year, you've acknowledged you've made operational changes to the Postal Service. You removed mail sorting machines. You've had reduction, elimination of overtime and late trips. In Las Vegas, where we're expecting mail volume to ramp up soon, our postal workers, the ones I spoke with yesterday, are reporting the removal of sorting machine from our general mail facility, which is actually right down the street from my house. As a former programmer and systems analyst, I have a real strong appreciation for the data. So I want to talk about the data that you use to create these policies and what you may or may not have analyzed before you've made these changes. During the pandemic, health officials, we've directed older Americans to stay at home for their own safety. That means for our seniors in Nevada and across the country, Postal Service is the only way they're going to receive their critical items. Life-saving prescription, household supplies, Social Security checks. For veterans, my colleagues have already mentioned this. It's a lifeline. 80% of veterans' prescriptions are filled by the United States Postal Service. I have 225,000 veterans in Nevada, many of them relying on this for their timely delivery of life-saving medication. And in small towns across Nevada, from Gabbs, who has a population of 269 people, to Shores, it's a tribal community with 658 people. Some of my larger rural communities, that's all they get is the Postal Service. So please, could you answer yes or no? Effort of time. Before developing and implementing policy changes since assuming your role this year, did you conduct any specific analysis on how your changes would impact seniors? Yes or no, sir?
So, ma'am, the policy changes that I...
Yes or no, sir?
The policy changes that I embarked upon were not the ones that you identified in your...
So you didn't do any analysis to see how seniors would be impacted. Okay, let's move on. Did you do an analysis to see how veterans might be impacted, knowing that so many of our postal workers are veterans? We employ so many veterans that they aren't getting their medication and that they rely on 80%. Did you do a specific analysis to see how veterans would be impacted?
The only change that I made, ma'am, was that the trucks leave on time. Theoretically, everyone should have got their mail faster.
So can you look me in the eye and all the Nevada veterans in the eye, all the Nevada seniors in the eye, and tell us that you will not continue in the policies in the future that you know that will harm my seniors, my veterans here in Nevada, and all of our seniors and veterans across this nation? Can you look us in the eye and commit to being sure that they have on-time delivery?
Well, I'm working towards on-time delivery, ma'am. Yes, I can commit to that.
Thank you. And so did you do any analysis about the fees if mail is late, the late fees that people would get when they paid their rent or their car payment or their utility bill if the mail is slowed down, and the impact that the charges and those fees would have on working families? Is there any analysis about the impact of late delivery by you on that, sir? Yes or no, please?
The analysis that we did was that if we moved the mail on schedule, that all late deliveries would have been improved. That's the analysis.
Well, obviously that isn't the case, so we need to continue this.
For a variety of reasons. Did
you, our deployed service members routinely cast their ballots by mail. Did you specifically analyze how your policy changes would impact our servicemen and women across this country and across the globe, how your changes would impact them, sir?
Senator, the analysis we did would show that we would improve service to every constituent.
So that's great. So can you provide me by this Sunday, if I understand you correctly, you have an analysis that will show that this should have improved it, although we are finding out through thousands and thousands of contacts to our office, to our connections, that it has not been the case. So this is frankly unacceptable, and I would like to see the analysis that this was based on to our offices by this Sunday. Can you commit to that, sir?
No, ma'am.
Can you commit to providing it to us at all, sir?
I will get back to you on that.
You cannot commit to providing the American people the analysis that you use to base your decisions on about their very important medications, their Social Security checks, and all all the other things. You won't commit to the American people to be transparent?
Senator, I will go back and get the truck schedule, the analysis that designed the truck schedule that I directed
Can you commit to transparency, sir? That's all I'm asking.
Very transparent.
Then
Yes,
that means that you would provide us your analysis. If you're transparent, then ergo, that means you will provide us the data that you use to base these important decisions that impact people's lives. I want you to look in the camera. There are millions of people watching who are impacted every day by what you do. And please understand that. And so I want you to commit to the American people, to transparency, and provide us with the data that has been used to create these decisions.
Ma'am, I do not accept the premise, and I will provide you with the transportation schedule that I directed the organization to adhere to. Yes, I will do that.
Well, we appreciate that. I look forward to seeing that. I look forward to having future discussions with you. Thank you. My time is up.
Is Senator Paul available?
Yes. Do you have me?
Senator Paul, yep, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. DeJoy, for your testimony, and thank you for taking what sounds like an often thankless job full of partisan rancor. And thanks for bringing your business acumen to something that really, probably from my opinion, is almost an impossible problem, short of legislative reform. And even with legislative reform, I see it as almost an impossibility how we'd actually balance the annual operating losses where you weren't running a loss every year. $8 to $9 billion a year is an enormous loss. And I've been of the opinion, basically, we shouldn't give you any more money unless it's attached to reform. That's the only leverage we have. When the post office becomes desperate for money, we should attach things they don't want to necessarily do. Less employees. We started that a few years ago, but we've got to do more of it. The mail keeps dropping. You've got to have less employees. That's where your legacy costs are too. Over time, you'll catch up on that, but we've got to go to less employees over time. We also need to look at the easiest way to continue personalized service to each person individually at their house would be to do it less frequently. And frankly, people who live 20 miles down a shell road, if you told them they were going to get it twice a week versus 6 times a week, I think we'd actually live with this. I grew up in a town of 13,000 people. I still live in a small town. I really think people could live with that, but people should be told of the problem of continuing to run massive deficits, not just in the post office, but throughout government. And that really we shouldn't pass money out like it's candy. We should send it attached to specific reforms. Could you list some of the legal impediments you have? You're a businessman. If you came in as a venture capitalist and a venture capitalist group took over the post office and named you CEO, what would you do that you're unable to do because it's a government entity now? What are the governmental or legal restraints that prevent you from actually fixing the $8 to $9 billion annual loss that the post office has?
Well, thank you, Senator, for the opportunity to address that. I'm a little bit more optimistic than you in terms of our ability to meet, at least get to a close point of break even. Number one, the legislative reform that I would ask is what I said in my written testimony and opening remarks on integration of Medicaid and reform, pension reform. I would like to be kind of liberated on pricing it's a very, very competitive market out there now. I would like more pricing freedom. I would drive, that would help us. I would like some of our unfunded mandates addressed with. And then within the organization, I would be able, without as much fanfare, to do a simple thing like, say, adhere to our schedules, right? And if we adhere to our schedules, that will improve performance. In transition, there would be an issue, but and we're seeing that recover right now. And once we get mail and packages moving at 97% with trucks that are moving at 97% on time, and we're driving costs out of the system by doing that. That's what I would do in my own business. And in my own business, I would grab new business revenue generating ideas, which we have here, that will drive billions of dollars of contribution to the cost to serve the American people. So we have we are in the beginning of having a plan. I'm an optimist about trying to pull this off.
I won't ask you your opinion on going from 6 days to 5 days, because that's really the job of Congress. But that's estimated to save $1 billion, $1.5 billion. And I think at the very least you have to do it. That could be a one-sentence bill that saves $1.5 billion over there and puts us on a better footing. I think you could go further and instead of assessing people more of a postal charge if they live 20 miles down a dirt road, simply just have less frequent delivery. And I think that alone would be tolerable. They'd still have personal service, but it would be less frequent. And I think you could make up for a large amount of your shortfall if you went actually below 5 days for some very rural areas. It's been contested, or it's been said that some of your competitors you use the post office for the last mile delivery, and that we don't charge them an adequate amount. They're sort of using the post office, the subsidized last mile delivery. Is that a problem? Do we charge your competitors enough when they get a package shipped to an area and then they use the post office for the last mile? Is that competitively bid? Do you think that's a problem? Should we do anything to fix that?
So Senator, if I may, when I first came here, when I first got this assignment, that was an obvious thing to me. Cut back 5 days. 4 days, whatever. And as I've worked through the process and researched and studied the organization, I think the 6-day delivery, the connection that the postal letter carrier has with the American people, that gives us this highly trusted brand, and where the economy is going in the future, I think that is probably our biggest strength to capitalize on. We talk about $1.5 billion to take a day away. I'm sitting here on a transportation schedule change that could get us $2 or $3 billion, all right, and improve service and improve the connection to the American people. So there are lots of.
I'll believe that when I see it. I don't doubt you, but I do doubt government and the post office history. So, what about the last mile delivery by your competitors? Are we getting a market rate from them?
We are studying the So I don't believe, my general view. I've been here 60 days and I've looked at that. We make broad-based deals across the whole country that deal with average rates. There are areas that we could push them up, and we're studying that. I don't believe that on the surface it's not it's reasonable business gaps that may exist is how I describe it.
All right. Well, thanks for trying to fix sort of a perhaps unfixable problem, and hang in there. And just the partisan barbs, hopefully they will be portrayed for what they are, partisan barbs that really aren't trying to fix anything, but they're just doing electoral politics by way of attacking you. So I apologize for that from my colleagues across the aisle, and wish you the best. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Senator Paul. Senator Romney, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Good, thank you. Look, I want to begin by expressing my appreciation to the thousands upon thousands of letter carriers. And I also want to note as well that the postal workers have made our vote-by-mail system in Utah a reliable and a very successful system, I think, for the entire nation. Mr. DeJoy, assuming as I do that you've been truthful in your testimony today, I can imagine how frustrating it is to be accused of political motives in your management responsibility. At the same time, of course, you can surely understand that there have been pretty good reasons for people to think that you or your colleagues are purposely acting to suppress voting, or that you're going to purposely prevent ballots from being counted. And any surprise at such concerns has to be tempered by the fact that the president has made repeated claims that mail-in voting will be fraudulent, and that he doesn't want to get more money to the post office because without more money, you can't have universal mail-in voting. Putting that aside, let me note that a great deal has been made of the fact that you contributed to President Trump's campaign. I would note that you also generously contributed to my campaign. So some people would say that you've contributed to both sides. Let me turn then and just note. let me note that like others today, I state the obvious when I say that reliable, valid voting is essential to democracy here, and of course to other places around the world. And particularly with COVID still raging, the mail is essential to our voting system and therefore to democracy. Can you do you have a high degree of confidence that virtually all the ballots that would be mailed, let's say 7 days before an election, would actually be able to be received and counted? I mean, if people vote within 7 days of an election, are they highly confident? Are you highly confident that those ballots would then be received?
Extremely highly confident. We will scour every plant the day, each night leading up to election day. Very, very confident.
I very much appreciate that. That is a commitment. I hope the American people, as they see news reports of this hearing and of others that are going to come in the House, will underscore the fact that if they get their ballots in at least 7 days before an election, and probably even closer to the election than that, but that the person who's running the post office is saying he is highly confident those ballots will be received by the various clerks in a timely way. That's key to us. On a separate topic, you mentioned that there are delays in the system, and that's of course to be expected. Are there greater delays in certain areas than others? So, for instance, are delays greater in rural areas than they are in the rest of the country?
Now, Senator, there's I think more urban areas where the coronavirus, the intimidation of the coronavirus, which scares our work, employee availability average has dropped across the nation about 4%. But when you can go into some of these, what I would say, hot spots, Philadelphia, Detroit, they're as much as 25%. And we have routes. We have, like Philadelphia has 750 routes, and we have days where we're short 200 carriers, and this can go on for a while. So that's where that's not the only contribution, but that's when the American people see 2-3 days that they haven't seen their carrier, that's an issue. And I would say I think there's at least 20 of those around in descending, level of consequence around the country.
Yeah, thank you. I will just stand by saying, like a number of my colleagues who've already expressed this point, I would very much look forward to seeing, and I'm not talking about by Sunday, I just mean at some point, seeing a plan developed by someone of your expertise in logistics for how we can get the post office to be more economically managed, but at the same time maintain a level of service which is essential for a functioning economy, and that's a real challenge. But as someone who's done what you've done throughout your career, I expect you to be up to the task. And like Senator Paul, I am anxious for there to be a recognition on the part of Congress that for us to demand certain service levels may require us to make legislative changes. So please feel welcome in our committee or in the House for letting us know what we need to do to make sure that you can do the job that we've asked you to do. Thank you, Mr. DeJoy. Appreciate your service.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Senator Romney. Senator Enzi.
Really appreciate you, Chairman Johnson, for holding this hearing. And I especially appreciate the Postmaster General coming to this hearing, knowing what kind of a target he will be. It's got to be really difficult only being in office 60 days and being expected to solve all of the problems of the Postal Service. It's been in a crisis for many years. Senator Collins used to head this committee when it wasn't called Homeland Security. It was Government Affairs, and she has worked on the post office all of that time and has a pretty good bill that she's worked on with Senator Feinstein that I hope people will take a look at. I'm not sure that anything can be done in a bipartisan way, particularly if one of the participants, Susan Collins, is up for election, because that might help her in her campaign. But she's been dedicated to this. It isn't a new idea that she had. It's something that she's been working on, and it has a lot of good ideas in it. I feel I really appreciate postal workers. In Wyoming, particularly, they're doing an outstanding job in spite of all of the difficulties of the pandemic. My father-in-law was a postal worker, and he was before the mail sorting machines, and he was pleased that he was able to memorize all the zip codes in the Sheridan area, and handle the sorting. Of course, now local mail isn't postmarked locally. These are problems. I didn't realize that you personally deliver everything, that you personally fix the sorting machines. It was all news to me. And detailed analysis, how much detailed analysis can you do in 60 days? Particularly as I suspect that maybe people aren't wanting to share information with you. I hope that those postal workers out there that are dedicated will actually do something to help out on it. And of course, you've been accused of picking on veterans and picking on seniors. And I have to admit that I have felt picked on, not by you, but by the Postal Service recently. And I was glad to hear your explanation that you're having some difficulty with people to deliver the mail in light of the pandemic. I don't think a lot of people understand that. I didn't understand that. But I know that we had a package that we were expecting that was being traced, and we paid extra to have it traced. And we know it sat in the D.C. post office for 11 days before it was delivered to us. There have been days that our mail wasn't picked up. So I'm glad to know that the reason behind that, and to find out, this is the big surprise, it wasn't you. I thought you caused all of that. Mail sorting machines. In Wyoming, I don't think we sort any mail in Wyoming anymore. All those got moved to other centers. And I thought it was being done pretty efficiently in Wyoming. And what I also learned was that when you move a sorting center under the union requirements, if the people don't want to move, they don't have to move, and they still get paid. That's not going to save any money. I've asked for the analysis on some of these changes that have drastically affected Wyoming, and which, of course, were not done under you. It was done under previous administrations. And I know that they want to save money, but they've got to do some analysis that will actually save money. You used to be able to put money in a collection box, or put an envelope in a collection box for local delivery, and they got it the next day. Now you put it in my community for local delivery. It goes to Denver first, gets sorted, and comes back to Gillette. Sometimes postmarked in Denver. That's not good management. And as an accountant, I know that postmarks make a difference. So I'm concerned. I have a lot of concerns, and I'm only pointing these out because I know that you only had 60 days to work on them, and your plate was already full, but I'm trying to fill it a little bit more. And again, appreciate that you're willing to take on this. I guess you'd have to call it an adventure, not a job, because it would be too tough as a job. But I know you've made some sacrifices to get to this. I hope that you will take a look at the urban areas. We've been picked on in the rural areas for a long time, but we have some really efficient people out here that are dealing with long distances and doing it very well. But when I go to my post office in D.C., I find that there's only one person working at the counter, and if the person that comes up to the counter needs a box to mail it in, the boxes are not out where people can actually get them. So the person behind the counter has to leave and go get a box. And when they bring the box back, it still has to be sealed and addressed. And they don't move them over to the side to see if they can wait on the next customer. Everybody waits at social distancing. I've been to the post office before during my lunch hour and found that the postal workers decided that was their lunch hour as well. No business lets their employees sit down and eat in front of customers during their lunch hour. Well, enough of my, I guess, trying to defend you here, but
Senator, thank you. Senator, if I may, and thank you for the support. But if I may, the day I take the seat, as with any organization, the day you become the CEO, you're responsible for everything that goes on around you. And I have big enough shoulders to deal with that. But but more important about what you said in the beginning about legislation, not moving. We, the organization, needs to, and this board, we will move forward. We have to, because without legislation, without any assistance, we will run out of money. And 9 months, 12, we talk about a 633,000 person organization and 9 months worth of cash, and everybody thinks we're okay. That's outrageous thinking. And so we need to, we will, and that's kind of the difference now. When we are moving, as I said in my opening remarks to the Board of Governors, we will do what we need to do to stay, to meet our operating objectives and get to self-sustaining, manner. So thank you.
I appreciate your willingness to be here, and I hope that you will take a look at the Collins-Feinstein bill and give us some analysis on that. And I recognize that you have to rely on postmasters across the United States of doing their job to manage their own business. So thank you for taking this job.
Thanks. Thank you, Senator Enzi. Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. DeJoy, for being here. Let me see if I can ask a few questions to get started that will maybe help clear out some of this misinformation that we have heard repeated over and over and over again in the media, and some of it echoed today. Just to be clear, will USPS have enough cash on hand to support operating expenses through the November election?
Yes, sir.
Has the Postal Service seen an increase, actually, in total operating revenues in the most recently reported quarter relative to last year?
Yes, sir. Small, but yes.
Has the Postal Service seen its overall cash on hand position increase since the start of the pandemic in March to a level of approximately $15 billion? Is that right?
Somewhere between 14 and 15 billion. Yes.
So if I've understood your testimony correctly today, what I've heard you say and also what I've read in your written testimony, your testimony to us is that the Postal Service has the wherewithal, it has the resources, it has what it needs in order to deliver the mail safely and on time through the November election. Just to be clear about that, is that right?
So yes, Senator. Two separate things, though. To deliver on the election and cash to operate the business in the future are two separate things. But yes, we have plenty of cash to operate for the election.
Yeah, no, just on that second point, since you bring it up, what's your estimate of the amount of additional assistance that you require as you look toward the future, past November and into the months and years to come?
I think we have had, the biggest thing we need is legislative reform and the PRC to decide. But I estimated about $10 billion. We estimated about $10 billion cost on the COVID expense side. And what I would like to see is the note that we have negotiated with Treasury be used to get long-term financing to buy new vehicles.
Can I just ask you about that since you bring up the note from Treasury? So the CARES Act authorized $10 billion in borrowing authority. I understand that you reached, USPS and the Treasury Department came to an agreement late last month in principle over what that would be, what that would look like. Can you give us a sense of when this $10 billion that was authorized, it's a loan, when this is likely to be made available to you, what you see its utility as? Just give us an update on where that stands.
So we have terms of agreement, and all we would need to do is when we request it, get a final document on it. But the terms have been agreed. I mean, the issue here with borrowing money is you need to know how you're going to pay it back. And you know, at this particular point, you know, we're evaluating that, but it is available to us pretty quickly.
And what do you anticipate using it for in the near term, assuming that you do avail yourselves of it?
There's pretty specific limitation. I cannot use it for capital, but I can use it to cover operating costs that are closely associated with COVID, and we can identify that pretty easily.
Now, you said just a second ago, when you first introduced the topic of the loan, you said that you would like additional authority to perhaps use the loan toward vehicles or as collateral for vehicles. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, so we have, you probably know, we have many 30-year-old vehicles and that we're desperately in need of new vehicles. The loan is not for capital. I would like to see the term extended and used as a capital type equipment loan to buy vehicles and other types of modernization efforts that we have. But longer term than 5 years.
Very good. And so that is part of the sort of the additional legislative reforms or authorizations you seek. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, sir. And
got it. Go ahead.
They've already been passed in a committee a couple of years ago, what we're looking for.
Right. Understood. Let's come back to some of the reforms that you had recently implemented. To what degree were any of the changes that you implemented over the summer a response to the OIG's recent findings?
I consider the OIG's recent findings, as we were doing our own analytics, I thought they were, for somebody new coming in, I thought they were a remarkable gift in terms of just laying out two things with that. The system was out of balance. The transportation system, 40,000 trucks a day were running. Once you get below 90%, you can't depend on anything, right? So that was, and then there was a cost gift. So both things, when I came in here, looking at where the organization was headed financially, and what was the thing we could balance around getting that transportation network aligned, which we will do, and saving $1 billion and a half to $2 billion, which we can reach for, was a Christmas present. I was elated.
Very good. Let me just ask you here. I see my time has almost expired, but let me just ask you in conclusion. I mean, as you probably know, my home state of Missouri, we have a very significant percentage of our population in rural areas. It's the part of the state that I'm from, where I grew up. It is absolutely vital to me that any postal service reform going forward continue to preserve the network of rural delivery service, that it preserves the existing delivery and post office box services that are available throughout rural Missouri. So can I just ask you, are you committed to protecting rural delivery and rural post offices for people like the folks I represent in Missouri?